Owning a ranch had taught one simple lesson over the years. People respected boundaries only when those boundaries inconvenienced them. Acres of open pasture, miles of weathered fencing, rolling hills, grazing cattle, and an old iron ranch gate had existed peacefully for decades. The gate marked the beginning of private land, not because its owner wanted to keep people out, but because ranch life demanded order. Livestock wandered, heavy equipment moved without warning, deliveries arrived at odd hours. The gate protected far more than property. It protected everyone beyond it. The ranch had belonged to the same family for generations. Every fence post had a story. Every oak tree had watched seasons come and go. The dirt road leading through the entrance wasn't a public roadway. It was a ranch access road, maintained entirely with private money. Gravel was replaced every spring, drainage ditches were cleared after storms, and repairs never came from county taxes. The responsibility rested solely on the ranch owner. Everything remained peaceful until a luxury housing development appeared less than a mile away. The neighborhood had arrived with polished entrance signs, decorative stone walls, expensive landscaping, and a homeowners association that quickly developed a reputation for inserting itself into everything around it. The subdivision promised exclusivity, order, and strict community standards. Residents paid large monthly HOA fees to maintain that image. Unfortunately, convenience mattered more than rules whenever residents wanted to save themselves a few minutes. Most drivers stayed on the public roads surrounding the neighborhood. One person did not. The HOA president, a woman who believed every nearby piece of land somehow existed for her benefit, discovered that cutting across the ranch reduced her daily commute by nearly 7 minutes. Instead of driving around the legal public route, she simply entered through the ranch gate, crossed nearly half a mile of private property, exited through another maintenance access point, and continued toward town. At first, it seemed like an isolated mistake. Perhaps she had taken a wrong turn. Perhaps GPS had confused the roads. Perhaps she simply hadn't realized the entrance was private property. Those possibilities disappeared after the 3rd week. The tire tracks became impossible to ignore. Fresh ruts appeared every morning. Dust clouds drifted across cattle fields during afternoon hours. Security cameras installed to monitor livestock began recording the same luxury SUV passing through day after day with remarkable consistency. Every weekday, sometimes twice a day, occasionally 3 times. The recordings painted an unmistakable pattern. The vehicle slowed only long enough for the automatic ranch gate to finish opening after another legitimate visitor entered. Instead of waiting outside, the SUV slipped through behind delivery trucks, veterinarians, feed suppliers, or ranch employees before the gate could close. The maneuver became almost routine. It wasn't accidental. It was calculated. Rather than confront the situation immediately, the ranch owner chose patience. Experience had shown that documenting problems usually proved far more valuable than reacting emotionally. Every recording was downloaded. Every date was logged. Every timestamp was organized into folders. The security system stored high-definition footage from multiple camera angles, covering the gate, roadway, and exit. Within 2 months, the collection had grown surprisingly large. Meanwhile, the ranch itself began showing signs of repeated unauthorized traffic. Fresh gravel loosened under unnecessary vehicle weight. Tire grooves collected rainwater, creating muddy channels after storms. Dust settled across newly repaired fencing. A section of roadside drainage required repairs weeks earlier than expected because repeated traffic had weakened the shoulder. None of the damage appeared catastrophic individually. Together, however, they revealed an obvious truth. Someone was treating private property like a public street. Neighbors occasionally mentioned seeing the same white luxury SUV speeding through ranchland during morning hours. Delivery drivers asked whether a new road had opened, because they frequently encountered unfamiliar vehicles crossing the property. Even local ranch hands noticed. The cattle certainly noticed. Several times livestock moved away from grazing areas whenever engines echoed through the fields. While they eventually returned, repeated disturbances affected normal movement patterns. Still, the ranch owner remained calm. No dramatic confrontations, no angry phone calls, no social media arguments, just documentation. Every incident quietly joined an expanding archive. A closer review of county property records confirms something interesting. The woman driving the SUV wasn't simply another resident. She served as president of the nearby Homeowners Association. That explained more than expected. Over the previous year, stories had circulated throughout neighboring communities about unusually aggressive HOA enforcement. Residents reportedly received violation notices over flower colors, mailbox decorations, driveway stains, and even holiday decorations that remained one day too long. Control appeared central to her leadership style. Ironically, the same person demanding strict compliance inside her subdivision seemed remarkably comfortable ignoring property boundaries outside it. The contradiction was difficult to ignore. Still, assumptions solved nothing. Evidence did. More cameras were quietly installed. One overlooked section near the southern fence line received additional coverage. Motion sensors captured license plates entering both access roads. Drone surveys documented roadway conditions every few weeks to establish maintenance records. Everything remained entirely legal. Everything remained entirely discreet. The growing file now contained hundreds of photographs, hours of video footage, weather reports, maintenance invoices, gravel replacement receipts, repair estimates, and detailed logs showing precisely how often unauthorized vehicles crossed ranch property. Yet one question remained unanswered. Why had she become so confident? The answer appeared during an ordinary Tuesday morning. A landscaping crew servicing the subdivision accidentally blocked the public entrance road. Instead of waiting like every other driver, the HOA president immediately diverted toward the ranch, bypassed the temporary traffic delay, crossed private land again, and continued without hesitation. She never slowed. She never looked around. She behaved exactly like someone convinced she possessed permanent permission. Confidence often grows from repetition. Repeated success creates habit. Habit creates entitlement. Entitlement eventually creates mistakes. That mistake arrived sooner than expected. One afternoon, while reviewing camera footage, something unusual appeared. The SUV wasn't alone anymore. Two additional neighborhood residents followed behind it through the ranch gate, within seconds of each other. Apparently, the shortcut had become common knowledge. Instead of one unauthorized driver, several residents had begun using private ranch roads whenever traffic increased around the subdivision. Someone had started treating the ranch like an unofficial HOA access route. That changed everything. One careless driver represented trespassing. Multiple drivers represented an organized pattern. The ranch owner immediately expanded documentation efforts. Vehicle counts increased. License plates were recorded. Maintenance expenses were separated by category. Professional inspections evaluated roadway wear. Property maps highlighted every unauthorized crossing. Everything pointed toward one unavoidable conclusion. This situation was no longer about saving 7 minutes on a commute. It had evolved into repeated unauthorized use of private infrastructure, creating measurable financial losses while exposing the ranch owner to significant legal liability if an accident ever occurred on the property. Patience remained the better strategy. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no shouting, no roadside arguments. Instead, every piece of evidence would continue accumulating until the timing was impossible to ignore. Because sometimes the strongest trap isn't built with fences, chains, or locks. Sometimes it's built with paperwork, cameras, and the certainty that someone who believes the rules don't apply to them will eventually make one mistake too many. And by the time the HOA president realized how much evidence had already been collected, the first step of a far larger legal strategy was already quietly falling into place. The easiest response would have been confrontation, a locked gate, a heated argument, a trespassing report, a viral video posted online for everyone to judge. Instead, the ranch owner deliberately chose the slower path, knowing that patience often produced results far greater than anger ever could. By the beginning of summer, the evidence had grown impossible to ignore. Months of security footage documented the same luxury SUV entering through the ranch gate over and over again. Additional recordings now showed several other vehicles from the nearby subdivision following the exact same route. What had begun as one person's shortcut was quietly evolving into an unofficial neighborhood access road. That development changed everything. A single trespasser might claim confusion. Several different residents following the identical path suggested something entirely different. Someone had normalized crossing private property. The ranch owner expanded the documentation process even further. Every morning began with a quick inspection of the entrance road. Fresh tire marks were photographed before ranch trucks disturbed them. Drone footage captured the condition of the gravel from above, creating a visual timeline showing how the roadway slowly deteriorated under repeated, unauthorized traffic. Each repair invoice was placed into carefully labeled folders. Every load of replacement gravel, every hour spent grading the road, every drainage repair, every maintenance expense. The numbers were becoming surprisingly significant. While none of the individual repairs seemed expensive, the cumulative cost painted a completely different picture. The ranch owner also understood another concern that most people overlooked. The ranch wasn't simply empty land. Heavy tractors moved unpredictably throughout the day. Livestock crossed internal roads without warning. Hay trucks frequently carried oversized loads. Feed deliveries arrived before sunrise. Veterinarians often rushed through the property during emergencies involving injured animals. An unexpected civilian vehicle weaving through ranch operations wasn't merely inconvenient. It created serious liability. If an unauthorized driver struck a cow, if a child riding inside the SUV wandered into a livestock pen, if construction equipment collided with an unexpected vehicle, the legal consequences could become devastating. Rather than speculate, the ranch owner requested a professional risk assessment. An agricultural insurance consultant visited the property. Over several hours, every roadway, entrance point, equipment crossing and livestock area was inspected. The consultant reviewed traffic patterns, maintenance records, and security footage before preparing a detailed written report. The conclusion confirmed what experience had already suggested. Unauthorized vehicle traffic dramatically increased liability exposure. The report explained that allowing repeated unauthorized access without taking reasonable preventative measures could eventually create legal complications if someone were injured. That single document became one of the strongest pieces of evidence collected so far. The ranch owner wasn't simply protecting property anymore. The goal had become protecting everyone involved. Meanwhile, something else was quietly happening inside the subdivision. Residents had become comfortable. The shortcut saved several minutes during busy mornings. Parents driving children to school began using it. Contractors occasionally followed residents through the gate. Delivery vans copied whatever local traffic seemed to be doing. Every successful shortcut encouraged another. No one questioned why it worked. No one wondered whether permission existed. People simply followed the vehicle in front of them. Months of uninterrupted access had created a false sense of legitimacy. Unfortunately for them, security cameras never forgot. The ranch owner installed 2 additional license plate recognition cameras near secondary access points. Unlike ordinary surveillance systems, these cameras automatically recorded vehicle information along with precise timestamps. A detailed spreadsheet soon emerged. Vehicle, date, time, direction of travel, duration on the property, frequency. Patterns quickly appeared. One vehicle crossed nearly 90 times. Another appeared more than 50. Several contractors entered repeatedly during landscaping projects. The HOA president remained the undisputed leader. Her SUV appeared almost every weekday, sometimes before sunrise, sometimes after sunset, occasionally during weekends. She wasn't occasionally using the ranch. She depended on it. Curiosity eventually led the ranch owner to examine publicly available county maps. The results were fascinating. The subdivision already possessed 2 fully legal public entrances. Neither entrance required crossing private land. The official routes were slightly longer, but perfectly functional. There had never been any necessity for the shortcut, only convenience. That realization mattered, because inconvenience never grants legal permission. As summer continued, weather created another unexpected complication. Several heavy rainstorms struck the area. The ranch roads became soft. Drainage ditches filled rapidly. Fresh gravel shifted under the weight of repeated traffic. Most ranch workers understood how to navigate those conditions. The unauthorized drivers did not. Security footage showed several SUVs spinning tires, leaving deep ruts while trying to maintain speed through muddy sections. Each incident caused additional erosion. Repair costs continued climbing. The ranch owner quietly hired a licensed civil engineering firm specializing in rural roadways. Their assignment seemed straightforward. Inspect the access road. Evaluate damage. Estimate maintenance costs directly related to repeated unauthorized traffic. After completing measurements, soil analysis, and structural evaluations, the engineers produced another comprehensive report. Years of ordinary ranch use had not caused the unusual wear patterns. Frequent passenger vehicle traffic traveling at commuter speeds had accelerated deterioration considerably. Again, another professionally documented piece of evidence joined the growing case file. Weeks later, something even more surprising occurred. One of the ranch employees reported seeing the HOA president waving another resident toward the entrance. Security footage confirmed it. She slowed near the public road, waited for another SUV, then proceeded through the ranch gate, while the second vehicle followed closely behind. Whether intentional or not, the message seemed obvious. She was introducing others to the shortcut. That single recording would later become incredibly important. Instead of discouraging trespassing, she appeared to be encouraging it. Still, no confrontation, no warning, no dramatic social media posts, only more documentation. By late August, the ranch owner met with a respected property attorney. Rather than rushing into court, they spent hours reviewing every document collected over the previous several months. The attorney rarely interrupted. Video after video played across the conference room screen. Drone footage, maintenance invoices, insurance reports, engineering assessments, property surveys, license plate logs, county maps, photographs, inspection reports. Everything had been organized with remarkable precision. When the final video ended, the attorney leaned back and studied the growing collection. One observation stood above everything else. This wasn't an emotional dispute. It was an evidence-based property case. That distinction mattered enormously. The attorney recommended continuing documentation for a little longer, while taking one additional precaution: install highly visible warning signs, not because they were legally required, because they would permanently eliminate any future claim of confusion. Within days, professionally manufactured signs appeared at every ranch entrance. Private property. No public access. Parameters vehicles only. 24-hour video surveillance. Trespassing will be documented. Bright reflective lettering made them impossible to miss. Each sign was photographed after installation. GPS coordinates recorded their locations. Installation dates were documented. Everything became evidence. The ranch owner intentionally avoided watching the cameras for several days afterward. There was no need. Either the signs would work, or they would create even stronger evidence. When the footage was finally reviewed, the answer appeared immediately. The HOA president drove directly past the new warning signs without slowing. The following morning she did it again, then again. Other subdivision residents followed. The signs changed absolutely nothing. If anything, the unauthorized traffic continued exactly as before. The attorney smiled when shown the updated footage. Visible warnings eliminated nearly every possible excuse. Now every future crossing carried even greater legal significance. The ranch owner wasn't building a trap based on tricks. The trap consisted entirely of choices. Every warning ignored. Every sign passed. Every recorded violation. Every unnecessary shortcut. Each decision belonged solely to the people behind the steering wheel, and they continued making the same decision day after day, never realizing that every trip through the ranch gate quietly increased the financial consequences waiting just beyond the horizon. By early autumn, the ranch owner had reached a point where gathering additional evidence no longer served much purpose. The documentation had become overwhelming. Months of high-definition surveillance footage, engineering reports, maintenance invoices, insurance assessments, drone imagery, county property maps, GPS coordinates, and professionally installed warning signs all told the exact same story. Private property had been repeatedly used as a personal shortcut. The evidence wasn't based on assumptions, it wasn't based on opinions. It wasn't built around emotional arguments or neighborhood gossip. Every conclusion rested on objective facts that could be independently verified. Yet the ranch owner still refused to rush into court. Patience had become part of the strategy. Experience had taught that people who ignored obvious boundaries often became increasingly careless the longer they escaped consequences. Every week without confrontation encouraged even greater confidence. That confidence almost always produced a mistake, impossible to defend later. That mistake arrived on an unusually busy Monday morning. A large livestock trailer entered the ranch shortly after sunrise, carrying several recently purchased cattle. Transporting animals safely required careful timing. Ranch employees temporarily slowed traffic around internal roads, while guiding the animals toward prepared grazing areas. It was a routine operation performed countless times before. Everyone working on the ranch understood the procedure. Everyone except the unauthorized drivers. Security cameras captured the familiar white luxury SUV approaching the entrance at its usual speed. Without hesitation, it followed a delivery truck through the automatic gate before it could close. The warning signs stood only a few feet away, their reflective lettering impossible to overlook. The SUV continued deeper into the ranch. Several moments later, another subdivision resident followed the exact same route. As both vehicles approached an internal crossing, ranch workers were moving livestock across the roadway. Instead of slowing well in advance, the lead SUV attempted to maneuver around the temporary work area. The sudden movement startled several cattle. Although the ranch hands regained control almost immediately, and no animals were injured, the disruption created a dangerous situation that could easily have ended far differently. The incident lasted less than a minute. Its legal significance lasted much longer. Every second had been captured by multiple cameras. The footage showed the warning signs. It showed the unauthorized entry. It showed active ranch operations. It showed employees directing livestock. It showed the SUV bypassing obvious work activity instead of waiting. Most importantly, it demonstrated that unauthorized traffic wasn't merely creating maintenance expenses anymore. It was interfering with normal agricultural operations. That distinction dramatically strengthened the case. The ranch owner immediately requested written statements from every employee present that morning. Each statement described only observable facts, no exaggeration, no speculation. Only documented observations supported by video evidence. The attorney added them to the growing file. A few days later, another unexpected development unfolded. A utility contractor contacted the ranch after noticing frequent civilian traffic using what appeared to be a restricted agricultural access road. During scheduled maintenance on nearby electrical equipment, the contractor had assumed the road was public because so many private vehicles regularly traveled across it. That observation created another concern. Repeated unauthorized use had become so common that outside professionals believed the ranch road served as an official public connection. The attorney immediately recognized the importance of that misunderstanding. Allowing private land to appear publicly accessible created additional liability concerns. The ranch owner responded by commissioning a licensed land surveyor to conduct a complete boundary verification. Every property corner was confirmed. Every easement was reviewed. Every recorded right-of-way was examined. Weeks later, the survey report reached a clear conclusion. The subdivision possessed absolutely no legal access rights across the ranch. No easement. No historical roadway claim, no maintenance agreement, no recorded permission, no shared use contract. The shortcut existed only because people had chosen to ignore ownership boundaries. With every new professional report, the legal foundation became stronger. Still, the HOA president continued driving through the ranch almost daily. Confidence had become routine. Routine had become carelessness. Carelessness eventually became arrogance. That arrogance surfaced during the annual HOA community newsletter. While reviewing publicly available HOA communications, the ranch owner's attorney noticed something unusual. The newsletter encouraged residents to avoid morning congestion by using the faster rear access route whenever traffic becomes heavy. Although the ranch was never mentioned by name, maps included with the newsletter clearly illustrated the exact path crossing private property. The attorney immediately secured certified copies before they disappeared. Whether intentional or not, the publication suggested that HOA leadership had normalized the shortcut for the entire neighborhood. That single document transformed the situation. The issue was no longer limited to one individual's repeated trespassing. Evidence now suggested that HOA leadership had effectively promoted unauthorized access to private land. The legal implications expanded considerably. The attorney spent the next several weeks organizing the evidence into a comprehensive civil case. Every exhibit received its own numbered section: security footage, engineering assessments, insurance evaluations, maintenance costs, survey reports, drone imagery, employee statements, license plate records, photographs of warning signs, certified property records, copies of the HOA newsletter. Nothing was left unorganized. The final file filled multiple binders. Meanwhile, the ranch owner continued daily life almost exactly as before. Cattle still grazed peacefully. Fence repairs continued. Equipment was serviced. Hay fields were harvested. To anyone watching from outside, nothing appeared unusual. The calmness itself became part of the strategy. There were no public accusations, no threatening letters, No emotional confrontations at the neighborhood entrance. The ranch owner allowed the evidence to speak for itself. Then came the final turning point. One crisp October afternoon, a professional process server quietly arrived at the HOA president's residence. Inside the envelope sat a civil complaint, supported by months of meticulously organized documentation. The lawsuit alleged repeated trespassing, property damage, interference with agricultural operations, increased maintenance costs, and liability exposure resulting from the unauthorized use of private ranch infrastructure. The complaint also sought recovery of documented financial losses, attorney's fees where permitted, injunctive relief preventing future access, and additional damages supported by the evidence. For the first time in months, the HOA president appeared genuinely surprised. According to later court filings, the volume of documentation came as a complete shock. The lawsuit didn't rely on a single security clip. It relied on hundreds. It didn't include one repair invoice. It included dozens. It didn't present one photograph. It presented an entire timeline spanning several seasons. Every attempt to dismiss the case encountered another carefully organized exhibit. The attorney representing the ranch owner had anticipated nearly every possible defense long before the complaint was ever filed. Claims of confusion failed because warning signs had been professionally installed and repeatedly ignored. Claims of public access failed because certified surveys confirmed private ownership. Claims of insignificant damage failed because licensed engineers documented measurable roadway deterioration. Claims of isolated mistakes failed because months of surveillance established an unmistakable pattern. What initially appeared to be a simple neighborhood disagreement had quietly evolved into one of the strongest property cases the attorney had handled in years. The HOA board suddenly faced uncomfortable questions from residents. Why had leadership encouraged a shortcut across private property? Why had obvious warning signs been ignored? Why had no one verified whether permission actually existed? Most importantly, why had months passed without recognizing that every unauthorized trip was being documented? As legal deadlines approached, settlement discussions quietly began. For the first time since the entire situation started, the confidence that had defined the HOA president's actions began to disappear. Because the trap had never been hidden beneath the road. It had been hidden inside every decision she voluntarily made. And now, with trial preparations underway, the financial consequences were about to become far greater than anyone inside the subdivision had ever imagined. As autumn turned toward winter, the legal dispute entered its final stage. For months, the ranch owner had remained almost completely silent. There had been no interviews, no dramatic social media posts, no neighborhood confrontations, and no attempts to embarrass anyone publicly. Every decision had been made with one objective in mind: allow the evidence to tell the story. By the time the court proceedings officially began, that story was impossible to ignore. The ranch owner's attorney organized the case with remarkable precision. Instead of relying on emotional arguments, the presentation followed a simple timeline that stretched back nearly a year. Every document supported the next one. Every photograph matched a specific date. Every maintenance invoice corresponded with security footage. Every engineering report reinforced the physical damage recorded by cameras. Nothing depended on opinion. Everything depended on facts. The first exhibits established ownership. Certified county property records confirmed the ranch boundaries beyond any dispute. Professional survey maps showed every property line, every fence, every gate, and every legal access point surrounding the land. There was no public road crossing the ranch. There never had been. Next came the surveillance footage. The court reviewed clip after clip showing the same white luxury SUV entering through the ranch gate. The timestamps revealed a pattern that stretched across several seasons. The recordings weren't isolated incidents separated by weeks. They occurred almost daily. Some mornings before sunrise, some evenings after work, occasionally multiple times during the same day. Each recording strengthened the same conclusion. The crossings weren't accidental. They had become routine. The attorney then introduced the warning signs. Large photographs displayed the reflective notices posted at every entrance. Private property, no public access. Ascending vehicles only. 24-hour video surveillance. Trespassing will be documented. Additional evidence confirmed exactly when each sign had been installed. Security footage captured vehicles driving directly past those warnings without slowing down. The possibility of confusion disappeared completely. The engineering reports followed. Licensed professionals explained how repeated commuter traffic had accelerated deterioration of the privately maintained ranch road. Gravel displacement, drainage damage, erosion, and structural wear all exceeded what would normally be expected from ordinary agricultural use. Repair invoices supported every conclusion. The financial losses were measurable. Then came perhaps the most significant evidence of all, the insurance consultant's report. The document explained that unauthorized civilian traffic significantly increased the ranch owner's liability exposure. Every unauthorized vehicle introduced unnecessary risk around livestock, heavy machinery, agricultural equipment, and ranch operations. Even though no serious accident had occurred, the legal exposure itself carried real financial consequences. The court carefully considered those findings. The defense attempted several arguments. One suggested the road appeared open because the gate occasionally remained unlocked, while authorized deliveries entered the property. Security footage immediately answered that claim. The recordings clearly showed the HOA president waiting for legitimate vehicles before slipping through the gate behind them. The maneuver happened repeatedly. Another argument claimed the damage remained minimal. The engineering reports contradicted that assertion with detailed measurements, repair estimates, photographs, and maintenance records collected over many months. Another defense suggested there had never been malicious intent. The ranch owner's attorney acknowledged that point. Intent, however, wasn't the issue. Repeated unauthorized use after visible warnings had been installed demonstrated conscious disregard for private property rights. The distinction mattered. Then came the document that changed the atmosphere inside the courtroom, the HOA newsletter. Certified copies showed the publication encouraging residents to use a faster rear access route during periods of heavy traffic. Although the ranch wasn't named directly, the accompanying map aligned perfectly with the unauthorized shortcut crossing private land. Several residents later confirmed they believed the route had been approved because it appeared in official HOA communications. The courtroom grew noticeably quieter. What had started as one person's daily shortcut had quietly influenced an entire neighborhood. The judge spent considerable time reviewing the complete timeline. The evidence demonstrated consistency rather than coincidence. Repeated trespassing, repeated warnings, repeated documentation, repeated financial losses. Every stage had been recorded. Settlement discussions resumed shortly afterward. This time, the tone had changed dramatically. The HOA board recognized the strength of the evidence. Continuing toward a lengthy trial carried significant financial risk, especially with attorney fees continuing to grow. After several days of negotiations, both sides reached a comprehensive settlement. The HOA president accepted responsibility for her repeated unauthorized use of the ranch road. She agreed to compensate the ranch owner for documented roadway repairs, engineering assessments, survey expenses, security upgrades, legal costs where applicable, and other verified financial losses resulting from the prolonged trespassing. The total exceeded $90,000. In addition, the HOA agreed to several permanent conditions. Every resident received written notice confirming that the ranch road was private property. The community newsletter issued a formal correction explaining that no resident possessed permission to cross the ranch. The HOA permanently removed every reference to the shortcut from its communications. Future violations would result in immediate legal action. The subdivision also agreed to educate new homeowners about the correct public access routes to prevent similar problems from ever developing again. Within weeks, the difference became obvious. The ranch gate returned to its original purpose. Only authorized vehicles entered. The endless stream of commuter traffic disappeared. Fresh gravel remained smooth for the first time in months. Drainage ditches no longer required constant repair. The cattle grazed without engines interrupting their movement. Morning dust clouds vanished. Peace gradually returned to the property. Perhaps the most surprising change occurred inside the neighborhood itself. Residents who had previously accepted HOA decisions without question began paying closer attention to board meetings. They asked more questions before approving policies. They requested documentation instead of assumptions. Leadership became noticeably more cautious, recognizing that confidence alone could never replace legal authority. The HOA also adopted stricter internal review procedures before making decisions involving neighboring properties. One expensive mistake had become an unforgettable lesson. Looking back, the ranch owner realized the outcome had never depended on building an elaborate trap. There had been no hidden obstacles, no damaged gates, no intentional surprises. The so-called trap consisted of something much simpler: patience, documentation, professional advice, respect for the law. Every piece of evidence had been collected openly and legally. Every opportunity to stop had belonged to the people choosing to ignore the boundaries. The ranch owner never forced anyone to trespass, never encouraged another violation, never escalated the conflict emotionally. Instead, every unauthorized crossing became another page in a carefully organized record. Eventually, the evidence became impossible to dispute. The financial consequences weren't created by revenge. They were created by hundreds of individual decisions that ignored obvious warnings, private property rights, and common sense. The 7 minutes saved each morning ultimately became the most expensive shortcut anyone in the neighborhood had ever taken. Long after the settlement was finalized, the old iron ranch gate remained exactly where it had always stood. It looked no different than before, but everyone who passed it now understood something they hadn't understood at the beginning of the story. Boundaries don't exist to inconvenience people. They exist for a reason, and respecting them is always far less expensive than learning why they were there in the first place.